my warriors! Show them the strength of Ndongo! Drive them back now!
Throughout the vast, turbulent, and breathtaking annals of African history, the story of absolute power has not only been written by men, it has been forged in the fire, blood, and sheer brilliance of women. Call them what you will: ruthless autocrats, brilliant military strategists, fierce warriors, or living deities. These women did not just sit on inherited thrones, they seized them. They led thousands of men into the bloody jaws of war. They outmaneuvered greedy colonial empires, and they commanded kingdoms that stretched as far as the eye could see. Today, we journey back in time to immerse ourselves in the lives of the top 10 most powerful queens in African history. We will uncover their births, their lovers, their triumphs, and their brutal ends. Stepping back to 1478 BC into the golden sons of Thebes, at number 10, we have Hatshepsut, the female pharaoh who defied the gods themselves. Born to the mighty King Thutmose I and Queen Ahmose, Hatshepsut was thrust into a world of complex royal bloodlines. To secure the dynasty, she was married to her own half-brother, Thutmose II. Together, they had one daughter, Neferure. But when her frail husband was killed by illness, the throne was meant to pass to her infant stepson. Hatshepsut, however, possessed an ambition that could not be caged. Initially appointed as regent, she shattered the boundaries of ancient tradition by seizing the absolute power of Pharaoh for herself. She wore the traditional male pharaoh's false beard. She commanded as a king. During her staggering 21-year reign, she didn't just conquer lands, she built them. She commissioned the breathtaking temple of Deir el-Bahari and launched an extraordinarily wealthy naval expedition to the mysterious land of Punt. But absolute power breeds absolute envy. When she finally succumbed to bone cancer in her 50s, her stepson, Thutmose III, took his revenge. Her magnificent monuments were violently attacked, her statues smashed, and her legacy systematically chiseled away from the walls of history in an attempt to erase her from time itself. Leaving the Nile, we travel south to the scorching plains of Zazzau in present-day northern Nigeria. At number 9, we encounter Queen Amina of Zaria, a woman whose thirst for conquest was utterly insatiable. Born around 1533 to King Nikatau and Queen Bakwa Turunku, Amina grew up surrounded by immense wealth generated from the trans-Saharan trade of imported metals, cloth, salt, and war horses. While other princesses adorned themselves in jewels, Amina clad herself in heavy chainmail. She trained relentlessly with the Zazzau cavalry, mastering the art of the blade. When her brother Karama died in 1576, the fierce warrior took the throne. Amina famously refused to ever marry, fearing a husband would dilute her absolute authority. However, legend states a far darker truth. In every city she conquered, she would take a different handsome lover for the night. Come sunrise, to ensure he could never boast of sleeping with the queen, that lover was promptly killed. She was a lethal military genius. For 34 grueling years, she waged continuous, unrelenting war. She marched an army of 20,000 men across the continent, crushing Kano, Katsina, and pushing her borders all the way to Nupe and Kwararafa. She built massive, impenetrable mud walls around her conquered territories, fortifications known today as Amina's Walls. She fought until her very last breath, dying in a bloody military campaign at Atagara. Power is not always inherited in a palace. Sometimes, it is born from the depths of profound humiliation and agonizing pain. At number 8, we have Nandi, the mother of the legendary King Shaka Zulu. Born around 1760 in Melmoth, she was the daughter of Chief Bebe of the Langeni tribe. As a young woman, she fell into a forbidden romance with Senzanga Kona, a prince of the neighboring, relatively small Zulu clan. When Nandi fell pregnant out of wedlock, the Zulu elders cruelly dismissed her condition, claiming she was merely infected by the Ichaka, an intestinal beetle. When the child was born, Nandi named him Shaka, a bitter reminder of their insult. Driven out, mocked, and fiercely rejected by her own tribe and the Zulus, Nandi endured unimaginable hardship, but she refused to be broken. She poured her unyielding, ferocious spirit into her outcast son, constantly whispering into his ear that he was destined to conquer them all. And conquer he did. When Shaka seized the throne and forged the mighty Zulu Empire, he elevated his mother to Ndlovukazi, the great she-elephant. She was given absolute authority over military camps and political affairs. But in October 1827, tragedy struck. Nandi contracted dysentery and died. Shaka's mind snapped. His grief was so apocalyptic that he ordered a mourning period where no crops could be planted and no milk could be drank. Anyone who did not cry hard enough was instantly killed. Over 7,000 people and thousands of cows were slaughtered simply because the great she-elephant had closed her eyes. Our next matriarch's legend bridges two ancient worlds. At number 7, we meet the Queen of Sheba, historically known as Makeda. Ruling around 960 BC, Makeda commanded the fabulously wealthy kingdom of Aksum and Saba, covering parts of modern-day Ethiopia and Yemen. Hearing rumors of a phenomenally wise monarch in Jerusalem, she did not send an emissary. She went herself. Makeda marched across the blistering desert with a massive caravan carrying 4.5 tons of pure gold, rare spices, and precious gemstones. She challenged King Solomon with complex riddles, and his brilliance captivated her. But Makeda was no submissive guest. From their passionate union came a son, Menelik I. Makeda returned to her homeland, raising her son to become the first emperor of Ethiopia, founding the sacred Solomonic dynasty that would endure for nearly 3 millennia. And speaking of the fierce queens of the East, at number 6 we have Amanirenas, the Candace of Kush. Ruling the Nubian kingdom of Meroe from 40 to 10 BC, Amanirenas was a queen who demanded absolute respect. When her husband, King Teritekas, passed away, she was left to defend her kingdom alongside her son Akinidad. In 24 BC, the unstoppable Roman Empire under Emperor Augustus pushed into Egypt and demanded taxes from Kush. Amanirenas did not negotiate, she attacked. Blind in one eye from a previous brutal battle, this terrifying warrior queen mounted a massive war elephant and led 30,000 Nubian soldiers against the Roman garrisons. She captured Roman cities, tore down a bronze statue of Augustus Caesar, and buried his severed bronze head beneath the steps of a temple so her people could walk over him daily. The Romans fought back fiercely, but Amanirenas bled them dry for years, eventually forcing the most powerful empire on earth to sign a highly favorable peace treaty that remitted all taxes. Alexander the Great may have conquered the known world, but Amanirenas broke the Romans. To build an empire from the ashes, one must be willing to sacrifice the very thing they love the most. At number 5, we step into the early 18th century to witness the heartbreak of Queen Poku. Born into highest Ashanti royalty, Poku was the powerful niece of Osei Tutu, the founder of the Ashanti Empire. But the royal courts in Kumasi were a viper's nest. When her brother Dakon was violently killed in a brutal succession dispute, Poku knew she and her loyalists would be next. She gathered her people and fled into the treacherous, endless jungle. Hunted by heavily armed Ashanti executioners, they battled giant serpents, starvation, and enemy forces until they reached the violently raging current of the Komoe River. They were trapped. The priests declared that the river spirits demanded a sacrifice of noble blood to let them cross. They brought her a sick woman, but Poku shook her head. she looked down at her only child, a beautiful baby boy, the future heir to the golden throne. With tears streaming down her face, she walked to the water's edge and threw her infant son into the dark, freezing rapids. The child was killed, but miraculously, the waters receded and hippopotamuses formed a bridge. Her people crossed and survived. Turning back to the water, she wept the words, Bauli, meaning the child is dead. Thus, the Bauli tribe of the Ivory Coast was born. From absolute heartbreaking sacrifice, we move to a story of sheer cunning ambition. At number 4, we have Ahebi Ugbabe. Born around 1880 in Enugu Ezike in eastern Nigeria, Ahebi was a teenager fleeing the horrors of an arranged forced marriage. Running for her life, she traveled to Igala land. With no money and no protection, she resorted to sex work to survive. But Ahebi was a brilliant opportunist with a razor-sharp mind. She used her position to learn multiple local languages, eventually transitioning into a highly successful, wealthy trader of palm oil and horses. When the British colonialists arrived, Ahebi possessed the ultimate weapon. She could speak their language. Acting as an indispensable mediator and spy, she led British forces into her own homeland to conquer it. Rewarded for her betrayal, the British displaced the traditional male elders and appointed Ahebi as a warrant chief. But that wasn't enough. Ahebi traveled to the Ata of Igala and had herself crowned king, the only female king in the history of colonial Nigeria. She ruled with an autocratic, terrifying iron fist. She took bribes, she forced men into labor, and she seized beautiful young women to be her wives, essentially using them as servants. She became so overwhelmingly despised by her own people that she grew terrified they would refuse to bury her. In a final act of monumental arrogance, Ahebi performed her own lavish grand funeral rites while she was still alive. She died in 1948, a king without a country. As the dark shadow of European colonialism fell over the continent, the queens of Africa bared their fangs. At number 3, we have Queen Idia of the magnificent Benin Empire in present-day Nigeria. Born in the village of Ugiegudu, she was married to the fearsome Oba Ozolua. When the Oba died in the early 16th century, a brutal civil war erupted between her son Esije and his giant, fierce half-brother Arwaran. Idia did not stay hidden in the palace. Armed with profound dark medicinal knowledge and magical arts, she mobilized her own private army. She marched to the battlefield, deploying terrifying psychological warfare and brilliant military strategy to crush Arwaran. When the neighboring Igala kingdom sensed weakness and invaded, Idia once again rode to war, decimating the invaders. In sheer awe of his mother's terrifying power, Esije created a brand new title for her, Iyoba, the very first queen mother of Benin. Her face is the iconic ivory mask that remains the symbol of African art today. At number 2, we travel to Angola to witness a staggering 4-decade war of Queen Nzinga of Ndongo and Matamba. Born in 1583 to King Kilwanji, Nzinga grew up watching the Portuguese encroach upon her lands, demanding slaves. When her brother committed suicide, she seized the throne in 1624. Nzinga was a diplomat of terrifying intellect. She refused to bow to the Portuguese governor, famously ordering her servant to get on his hands and knees to form a human chair so she could look the European in the eye as an equal. When the Portuguese declared war, Nzinga did not surrender. She conquered the neighboring kingdom of Matamba, forged a strategic alliance with Dutch slave traders, and hired terrifying, cannibalistic Imbangala mercenaries to fight for her. She personally led her troops into bloody, hand-to-hand combat well into her 60s. She bled the Portuguese military for 40 years, forcing them to sign a peace treaty recognizing her sovereignty. She died peacefully at 80 years old, an undefeated legend. At number 1, we face the fierce wrath of Ya Asantewa of the Ashanti Empire. Born around 1840, she was the Queen Mother of Ejisu in modern-day Ghana. In 1900, the British governor, Sir Frederick Hodgson, committed the ultimate sacrilege. He demanded to sit upon the golden stool, the sacred soul of the Ashanti nation. The Ashanti men, terrified of the heavily armed British machine guns, held a secret meeting debating surrender. Ya Asantewa stood up, her eyes blazing. She shamed the men, declaring, "If you, the men of Ashanti, will not go forward, then we will. We, the women, will. I shall call upon my fellow women. We will fight the white men. We will fight till the last of us falls in the battlefields." She took absolute command of an army of 5,000 troops. She laid siege to the British fort in Kumasi for months, leading the last major female-led rebellion against British forces in history. Though heavily outgunned, she fought like a demon until she was finally captured and exiled to the Seychelles, where she died in 1921. But the golden stool was never taken. These 10 women did not politely ask for power. They seized it. They bled for it. They sacrificed their children. They commanded legions, and they used their brilliance to carve their names deeply into the eternal stone of history.